Hi, thanks for checking out another episode of our ACO Love Where You Live series. My name is Mia Farrell. I'm a designer at ACO, and in this special series, I'm taking you through a kitchen remodel for one of my clients. Today, I'm joined by Logan Ladd, tile installer at ACO, and we're gonna talk about this beautiful backsplash that just went in, and some of our approach to just tile installation in general. So thanks for being here, really appreciate it. Of course. Yeah, so let's just talk about when you go into a space, what is your approach to just getting after the tile?
Well, first thing obviously is job site protection. When you come into a home, obviously you want to take care of the homeowner's home. And so I look at where I'm going to be installing the tile, the countertop protection, as well as where I'm going to be using my wet saw outside, mixing mortar, and all those type of things. Because the last thing we want to do is destroy homeowners' homes, and we want to stay, just keep it nice and clean for everybody.
So when we're talking about the wet saw, is that typically garage, outside? What do you do when it's cold out?
So when it's cold out, I try and avoid using the wet saw as much as possible. But so as far as the approach of using the wet saw, I like to, typically when you're doing a backsplash, you're in a kitchen area. And so I'm blessed to have the back door to a back porch or so on and so forth close to me. And so typically what I do is I set it just off the porch, out of the way, so there's no spray getting on the home, no spray getting on the porch, because that spray, even though it is washable, it can take a little effort. And so just kind of, planning for that to happen is the best way to go about it.
Let's plan so we don't make more work for ourselves.
Exactly.
I love it.
Efficiency is my favorite thing.
Yeah, it's great. So talking about planning, when we're laying out tile designs on the front end with the homeowner, we talk about things like where do we want to center things and how do we want to lay this tile out. They think that that's something that when you come into a space, you're looking for that kind of thing too. We've got our tile drawings, but it's like, let's think about what makes sense for you. Yeah,
well, and so typically in your backsplash areas in your kitchens, you have a sink wall and a range wall where you have your oven, stove, all that sort of stuff. And so material dependent and all this, I always discuss with the homeowner, these are your options. We can center on the sink and then we can also center on your hood.
Sure.
And so I always like to show them the layout because sometimes they like full pieces at the end of their countertops where the cabinets come down. And so I always like to give them a little layout and give them an option of we can go this way or we can go this way.
Let's make sure we're totally good before we start setting tile on the wall.
Because once it's set, it's set in stone literally.
Exactly. So, and obviously we can see that this is a pretty, basic subway backsplash installation.
Correct.
So we do have, tiles centered on the sink, and that's a nice kind of half stagger approach, right? What about when we get into more complicated shapes and different mosaics and that kind of thing?
So when you get into more mosaics and stuff like that, things can be a little bit more complicated just because of the shape of the tile and making cuts around outlets and so on and so forth. And especially when you get into mosaics and you want to wrap windows, the most important thing is that you're staying exactly centered on that window. So when those mosaics wrap together, they're fitting together just perfectly because that's the focal point of the kitchen is that window. It really, that's where you're looking outside. It's what everybody sees when they're in their kitchen. And so mosaics can be a little bit more difficult, but the end result with mosaics is just a lot more beautiful product. So.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to bring some pizzazz to a space.
Correct.
But subway tile's so classic, people really love it. But I think we've seen a lot more of unique designs, and we do see a lot of unique tile in bathrooms. So what's different from approaching a bathroom tile installation?
Well, bathrooms are a lot different because obviously there is going to be moisture in that bathroom. There's going to be steam, all that sort of stuff. Sure. And so the preparation for bathrooms are pretty different compared to your backsplash because you're also looking at the center of the room. Where do you want your tiles to break on the wall? Some people like the tile centered in the room. Some people like to see a full tile on the wall that they walk in.
Right.
So like you were saying before, you have these tile drawings, and even though the designers do a great job at ACO, when you get on site, there's variables that I as the installer am looking at to make sure that install is going to be how the homeowner wants it.
Yeah. It's really important to have all those conversations, like you said, before we start setting tile, because it's going to be set.
Yes.
So speaking of tile being set, typically you'll come in, set the tile, and maybe same day, next day, the grout is going in. So let's talk a little bit about that and what that process looks like.
Okay, so grouting is the most difficult thing about grouting, or I could also say the most annoying part about it is once I set the tile, I have to go in, clean out the grout lines a little bit because especially we're using a white tile, so I used a white mortar behind it. That way, if there is little flakes and all that, I can take it out with a knife, and so that's not gonna pop through. And so before I even grout, I go through, clean the entire backsplash, so that way I'm not gonna have any mortar coming out, and then I grout. And sometimes you can do it the same day, but for example, this backsplash, it took me a day and a half to set, and then that's half a day that I had on the second day. I was able to grout everything, get it finished, get it wiped down. Perfect. And yeah, so this backsplash took me about a day and a half.
Yeah. Well, it's great. We love taking the tile to the ceiling too. I think that's something that we've seen a lot. Is there anything that we kind of need to be thinking about when we're trying to take tile to the ceiling?
Yeah, especially when you're wrapping around windows in a kitchen like this is one of the hardest spots is wrapping that window, because when that window is framed, a lot more often than not, sometimes the drywall where they mudded it on those corners is actually out an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch sometimes. And so I need to concentrate on that, put my levels on the wall so that when I'm wrapping it, I'm not having any variances in my tile when I'm wrapping around those windows.
Yeah, windows are tricky.
It's
tricky.
They are.
But you know, when you have a skilled tile setter like yourself, how many years of experience do you have?
I've been setting tile for 13 years.
That's a long time.
It is.
Lots of lessons learned along the way, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
We're very thankful to have you as part of the team.
Proud to be part of it.
Super excited to see any more tile installations you've got coming up. And thanks again for checking this episode out, and tune in next time to see what else we got going on.